Hey, what's up? So for like the past 100 videos I made, I've always had this microphone, and I would basically just have it off screen like this. So then I would sit up real close, you couldn't see it. And then I realized I can actually just hold this microphone and talk into it, and it's a lot more comfortable. So yeah, that's how I record videos. This headset I actually just wear because I don't want to do my hair. I don't actually use this mic right here. So anyways, thanks for coming back. I haven't recorded a video in a while, mostly just because, I got distracted. But I don't want to lose the habit, so I'm back. And today I want to talk about a couple of things I've been thinking about a lot. And I'm turning 37 soon. And I feel like 37 is kind of an interesting age. And last year I did a video like this about 36. So it might be interesting to kind of just keep track of what I'm thinking about and what's important to me at certain times at certain, you know, times of my life. And I hope some of this will be useful in terms of, there might be some tips in here or things that, might help you think about things, even if you're not turning 37. All right, so let's get started. So I think the biggest thing to start with is, when you're a kid, you have this perception of adults where everyone has everything figured out, right? And then you graduate from college, you realize, okay, no one has anything figured out. And then as you get older, you start realizing, yeah, pretty much no one at any age has anything figured out. People in their 50s and 60s are still figuring things out. And I think when I say figure things out, what I'm only mainly focused on outside of, making money is also like getting a really understanding of your own thoughts and emotions and how to regulate yourself. I think a lot of people have issues with that at any age, and it doesn't really come naturally, right? It has to be something you actually work on. So I think there's some respite in understanding that no one really has it figured out. So if you feel like you don't have it figured out either, it's totally fine because everyone, including me, is kind of in the same boat, right? Uh, at 37, I do feel like it's pretty interesting because you start to realize, hey, you're getting kind of old, right? You're pretty much almost 40, but at the same time you start realizing, hey, you're actually not that old because now is really when life starts because you're about to be a real adult. And it's also interesting because a lot of your peers have a pretty wide range and like you start hanging out with like people that are like 25 and you start hanging out with people that are like 60 and they're like kind of like the same to you now, right? Maybe not to that degree, but you could talk to someone like 10 to 20 years older than you and it would be the same. And then you could talk to someone like 10 years younger than you and it'd be the same, right? To some degree. And then I think at this stage in life, like when you're like 25, everyone's kind of like in the same point. But then at 37, everyone's kind of like pretty different. Like you have friends that are still single, you have friends that have like families and have like their fathers of three or whatever. Responsibilities are way different. So it's an interesting time. I'm going to start off with just a really general tip that I think it took me a long time to figure this out. And I think it helped everyone. And I think what happens as you get older is your body starts hurting everywhere, right? I actually started to realize I think pretty much all body aches, back pain, shoulder pain, or whatever, it all comes from what you're doing on a regular basis with your body. So you have habits where you're sitting a certain way, or you lift your shoulder a little bit higher, or you always like use your right arm more. Then that's going to cause muscle imbalances and things are going to hurt. So it took me a long time to realize I always just lean. I always lean like this, and my shoulder always hurts. And I always thought my shoulder was hurting from something else, but I'm starting to realize it's because I'm just leaning on shit all the time. And it took me like 15 years to figure that out. So if you have body pain, which you probably do if you're 37, it's probably from something you're doing really small. So I think if you just spend a little bit of time understanding that, a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of focus can go a long way in terms of healing, injuries or whatever that should happen in the first place. All right, so start there. In terms of money, I think that's one of the subjects I want to cover. I think at 37, your perception of money is a lot different than when you just got out of college, right? Because when you're in your 20s, it's kind of like, I got to do anything I can to get money. And then in your 30s, you're kind of like, okay, I've gotten some money. And now I'm realizing, oh, maybe I don't want to trade XYZ for money, right? Maybe I'd rather have a shorter commute or have a boss I like more or whatever. And you start realizing money isn't the end all be all. I think furthermore, when you're in your 30s, you start to realize you have a certain relationship with money, and maybe it comes from most likely it came from like you when you were a kid, probably how your parents treated money or whatever trauma you got. And I actually feel like it's really important to understand that your relationship with money and why it is that way, so you can at least understand yourself to a degree where you can adjust your habits so you're not doing things you don't want to do. For me, the one thing I think I learned recently, I don't know if it was this year or maybe the last couple of years, is money is never enough, right? Unless you decide it is. And what I mean by that is basically you can always make more money, and once you make more money, you can always spend more money, right? So it just is never enough. Once you make that salary you want to make, there's always more money to spend, and it's never enough until you mentally decide that it is. So it's really more of a mental issue than it is a money issue, if that makes any sense. And I think past a certain point, like after you cover all your expenses and basic living expenses, most of your money problems aren't really money. It's really more something that's going on inside of you and how your relationship with money. Um, Another thing that I've discovered really recently is that money can't be the end goal, right? So for me, for example, I was like, I gotta make this much money. I gotta save this much money. I gotta accumulate this much money, and then I can retire, and then I'll be happy or whatever, right? And you start to realize, like, okay, what happens after you get there? There's always a higher goal, and also, like, what's the point of that? What are you actually chasing? Like, am I chasing the feeling of, you know, security? Am I chasing, the feeling of like achievement? And like, why do I need that money to have that feeling, right? Why does it have to be a certain amount of money that I just arbitrarily decide? So I think that mindset and understanding that mindset is really important to your relationship with money. At least it was for me. And for me, what I've been working on, and what I think I've achieved, or I'm always working on achieving, is like really getting away from the scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. And I definitely have a scarcity mindset when it comes to money. I don't know why. Like when I was a kid, I've always been like really good with money. Like I always really had really good defense. I'm always good at saving money, really good at not spending money. And then like in my 20s, I was like pretty good at offense as well. So I was just always trying to accumulate more money and like just saving it, right? But it's like, why am I like that? What's the point of that, right? And the point is, oh, I want to become super rich, okay? But then like, what's the point of that, right? And then like, is that gonna make me happier if I think about money that way? Probably not, because I'm always like counting. I'm always like counting money, right? So more recently, I've been adopting this abundance mindset where I see money more as a tool to get what I want, right? So if I spend an extra, let's call, whatever amount of money, it doesn't matter the amount. If I spend extra, let's say $1,000 this month on something for whatever reason, like it's okay because that money will come back, right? And I see money more as a like I see myself now instead of like every day like I want to get rich, I want to get rich. I tell myself I'm already rich, right? I'm already rich, and that has helped me a lot in my mental. It's not really a struggle, but it's my mental thoughts about money, and I feel like that's actually helped me not think about money as much, so I can focus on my mind on other things that are more important. And I say all this with like I think you're not gonna like mindset your way out of poverty or whatever. Obviously, you need money. You need like a basic amount of you know your basic necessities covered. So like obviously, I have this little line here is like, hey, you have to have basic money management skills. But above that, I think once you get past that, I think most of it's mental. So hope this is interesting. I don't know. This is just some things I've been thinking about money recently. Another thing that I think is important at my age that I think is probably more important than money is just really understanding. One second. Really understanding how important your thoughts and your beliefs are. Because I would say actually the one realization I've come up with in the last 5 years is like your thoughts are actually the most important thing in your life because your thoughts pretty much dictate everything that happens to you. And then at 37, you spent you know 37 years thinking about certain things, and you have certain habits of how you think about things, right? So it's important to understand what your immediate habits are when you think about things. Like, what do you think about every day? And do those thoughts actually benefit? And can you actually change those thoughts so that you don't have them anymore? Or can you have more of them if it helps? Um, I definitely think your thoughts and beliefs are the largest contribution to your success and happiness. I'm trying to think of an example right now of like what I think about. But I think for me, like, I guess for me, like, in the past, I always had like pretty negative thoughts, like, oh, this won't work, that won't work, right? I just immediately go to if someone tells me something, I go, oh, that's not going to work for whatever reason. Why I do that, I don't know, but that's just a default that I have, and how different would my life be if I didn't have that default, right? Why do I have that? I don't know. But then if you notice that you do that, then you can start changing it, right? So yeah, so I think that's the thing that you want to pay attention to. If anything you get from this video, that's probably the one thing you want to pay attention to is like, what are you thinking about all the time, and how can you, how like is that helping you, and how can you change it if it isn't? Um, I strongly believe that there is a really strong connection between like what you're thinking about all the time and your health. Because if you're always consuming like negative news or whatever, or you're always thinking about the negative side of things, and your body's like you're stressed over these thoughts that of things that may not happen or may happen or whatever, like your body's probably feeding off that energy, right? Or feeding off that thought. Like it thinks that you're gonna go to war, or it thinks that you're gonna get eaten or something, right? So your body's always stressed. So your body's not putting its resources to protective things. It's like always just handling your stress. And I think there's like there's a world where you start getting you start adapting to it, where you start craving that stress, right? And then you start looking for that thing. So if you have a habit of always thinking negatively about something, and then maybe that thing that you're scared of happening goes away, you start thinking about something else that might happen, right? So it becomes a habit. And the older I get, the more I start to realize that I strongly believe that your thoughts shape your reality. Like what you think all the time basically will become what happens to you. And there's a lot of books about it. I would definitely check it out. But I think the more you understand that, the easier it is to change your thoughts. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think the video that I made like a couple years ago that got the most views was about how I just deeply analyzed like what happens to your friendships after 30. And the premise is basically like you basically lose all your friends after 30. Well, not really lose, but you start hanging out with your friends a lot less after 30. And I have like I analyzed it really deeply, where there's like I have a lot of reasons for it. But you probably do see your friends less when you are in your 30s than your 20s. And that's, I think it's kind of normal. And now that I'm like maybe 4 or 5 years, after 30 through 32, where that kind of starts to happen, I actually start to realize you actually start to see your friends more after you get like kind of a baseline. So I don't know if it's you actually see them more, or maybe your expectations are different now, so you see them. But for me, I've been seeing people like every other week, or like a couple times a week now, which I didn't really do a couple years ago. I don't know why, but yeah, you do start to shift back. And if you think about like people in their 50s or 60s, where they don't maybe 60s or later, where they don't have work or any sort of responsibilities as versus before, they start hanging out a lot more too. So I think it's important to just realize that friends are always going to be really important. Just because you don't hang out with them as much in your 30s because you're busy with life or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're not important anymore. So yeah, and then I think what happens to a lot of people is they start seeing less people in their 30s, and then they start getting sad or something because their relationships aren't the same as before. And I think it's okay to lose touch with people. I think it's just natural. But if you don't want it to happen, then don't let it happen, right? If you're sad that you're losing touch with someone, then just don't let it happen. If you aren't sad you're losing touch with them, then it's okay that it happens, right? And I'm starting to realize like in your early 30s and probably beyond, you probably start spending more effort on meeting people because it becomes important to make connections. You start realizing it becomes important, right? So you actually don't let you don't let that die, or you don't have to let that die. So yeah, I'm starting to realize like, okay, yeah, before I was like thinking, yeah, oh, you probably start going down, but it does come back up. So that's kind of how I feel about friends at 37. And then I just kind of want to share this thought exercise with you. This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Is like, okay, what if the future you came back in time and told you, hey, if you do these things, then you're gonna have an amazing life, and that's what I did. And if you do it, then we're gonna be super successful. We're gonna have the life we want. And what if you did those things and you didn't get the results you wanted? Would you keep doing them? Probably, right? Because you came back and told yourself, so it definitely happened. So you're 100% sure that if you do this, it was gonna happen. So then the question is this a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because if I tell you to do something and I give you the confidence that it's gonna happen for sure, would you keep doing it because you know it's gonna happen? Or is it the fact that you keep working on it that makes it happen, right? So it's like because you know that's going to happen, and I told you that's going to happen, and you believe that's going to happen. If you keep doing the work, then it ends up happening. But how much of that is because it was always going to happen, or how much was that because you kept doing it until it happened? I think it's the latter, but it doesn't matter which way it is because either way it happens, right? So then the question is, do you even need to be told that it's going to happen to get the confidence, right? So I guess what I'm trying to get at is you can just believe. If you believe anything will happen, if you keep working at it and you work at it with the confidence that it will happen, then it's going to happen. So you actually don't need to be told that from your future self. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, I kind of came to that realization the other day. A lot of times you don't want to do things or you don't try things because you're scared or you're worried that you're going to fail and you wasted time. But if you know for sure that it's going to succeed, then you would do everything, right? So yeah, something to think about. So just start believing in whatever you're doing and just do it nonstop until it happens, and it will happen. And that's it. Yeah. So yeah, this was like kind of a I don't know if it's a tip, but you probably already know this, but I come to the realization the easiest life hack or the easiest way to improve your quality of life is just to sleep earlier. And if you sleep early, so you're probably not doing anything from like the hours of like 10 and midnight, right? You're probably just wasting time on your phone. If you just don't do that and you go to sleep early, then you can wake up earlier and then you get a much better start in your day. I've never been a morning person, but I've recently been like waking up at 7 to go to the gym, which isn't even that early. But like I basically done the gym at 8:30, and I start work at 9 or 9 whatever, and like that's been completely changed my entire life because usually like you work till 5, you're like, oh, I gotta go to the gym, and it's like super packed or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it's already 6:30, I gotta eat dinner, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym tomorrow, and you just miss out. But if you start your day, you go to the gym already, then it's like, hey, at least got that done, and you feel good about your day. So even if you're not a morning person, I think you just gotta sleep earlier, and if you can't fall asleep early, then just don't use your phone and you'll probably fall asleep. So I sleep with my phone downstairs and I sleep upstairs. So that helps, but I would just try this out. So yeah, basically I think the last thing I'm thinking about at 37 is I don't know, for some reason in your 30s you're like, oh, I'm too old for this now. And then you start to realize, oh, you're actually not too old to do anything. So yeah, just do whatever you want to do. Although I will caveat with saying like some things are better off done when you're younger. Like a lot of the partying and stuff, like you probably should do when you're younger because your body just can't keep up as much. But maybe that's a self-limiting belief. I don't know, but that's kind of how I feel about it. So yeah. That being said, I think even at 37, I feel even more energy to do stuff than I did when I was 33, for example. So yeah. Hope this is helpful information. Thanks, and I'll see you next video. Bye.